feeling of being watched, even when alone, is a surprisingly common human experience. It's a sensation that can range from a mild sense of unease to a more profound and unsettling feeling of dread. While it might be tempting to dismiss this feeling as mere paranoia or an overactive imagination, the underlying reasons for it are complex and multifaceted, involving neurological, psychological, and even environmental factors. One potential explanation lies in our evolutionary history. As social creatures, humans have evolved to be highly attuned to the presence and intentions of others. In ancestral environments, being aware of potential predators or rivals was crucial for survival. This heightened awareness likely involved developing a sensitivity to subtle cues indicating the presence of another being, such as rustling leaves, distant sounds, or changes in air pressure. Over time, this sensitivity may have become hardwired into our brains, leading to a predisposition to detect potential threats even in the absence of concrete evidence. This innate tendency to be vigilant can sometimes result in false positives, where we perceive a threat when none actually exists. This is where psychological factors come into play. Our expectations, beliefs, and past experiences can all influence how we interpret sensory information. For example, if someone has a history of trauma or feels particularly vulnerable, they may be more likely to perceive threats in their environment, even in situations that are objectively safe. Similarly, individuals with anxiety disorders may experience heightened levels of vigilance and a tendency to interpret ambiguous cues as signs of danger. These psychological biases can amplify the feeling of being watched, making it feel more intense and persistent. Another contributing factor is the phenomenon of pareidolia, which is the tendency to see patterns or meaning in random stimuli. This can manifest in various ways, such as seeing faces in inanimate objects or hearing voices in static noise. In the context of feeling watched, pareidolia might lead us to misinterpret shadows, shapes, or sounds as evidence of another person's presence. For example, a tree branch swaying in the wind might be mistaken for a person lurking in the distance, or a creaking floorboard might be interpreted as footsteps. These misinterpretations can reinforce the feeling of being watched, even when there is no rational basis for it. Neurological factors also play a significant role in the experience of feeling watched. The brain is constantly processing sensory information from our environment, and this information is then filtered and interpreted by various brain regions. One area that is particularly relevant is the amygdala, which is responsible for processing emotions, especially fear and anxiety. When the amygdala detects a potential threat, it triggers a cascade of physiological responses, such as increased heart rate, rapid breathing, and heightened alertness. These responses can make us feel more anxious and vigilant, further amplifying the feeling of being watched. Additionally, other brain regions involved in spatial awareness and body perception, such as the parietal lobe and the cerebellum, may also contribute to the experience. These areas help us to understand our position in space and to distinguish between our own body movements and those of others. Disruptions in the functioning of these areas can lead to feelings of disorientation, detachment, or the sensation that our body is not our own, all of which can contribute to the feeling of being watched. Furthermore, environmental factors can also influence the experience. For example, being in a dark or unfamiliar place can increase our sense of vulnerability and make us more likely to perceive threats. Similarly, being alone or in a situation where we feel isolated can heighten our awareness of our surroundings and make us more sensitive to subtle cues. Certain types of lighting, such as low light or flickering lights, can also create ambiguous visual stimuli that are easily misinterpreted as signs of another person's presence. Moreover, cultural beliefs and social norms can also play a role. In some cultures, the belief in spirits or supernatural entities is widespread, and people may be more likely to attribute the feeling of being watched to these forces. Similarly, in societies where privacy is highly valued, the feeling of being watched may be more common, as people are more sensitive to potential intrusions on their personal space. It is important to note that the feeling of being watched is not necessarily a sign of mental illness. In most cases, it is a normal human experience that can be explained by a combination of factors. However, if the feeling is persistent, intense, and accompanied by other symptoms such as paranoia, hallucinations, or delusions, it may be a sign of a more serious underlying condition such as schizophrenia or delusional disorder. In these cases, it is important to seek professional help. There are several strategies that can be used to cope with the feeling of being watched. Firstly, it is helpful to try to identify the triggers for the feeling. What situations or environments make you more likely to experience it? Once you know what triggers the feeling, you can take steps to avoid those situations or to prepare yourself mentally before entering them. Secondly, it can be helpful to challenge your thoughts and beliefs about the feeling. Are you sure that you are actually being watched, or is it just a feeling? What evidence do you have to support your belief? By questioning your assumptions, you can reduce the anxiety and fear associated with the feeling. Thirdly, it can be helpful to practice relaxation techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, or yoga. These techniques can help to calm your nervous system and reduce your overall level of stress, making you less likely to experience the feeling of being watched. Fourthly, it can be helpful to talk to someone about your feelings. Talking to a friend, family member, or therapist can help you to process your emotions and to gain a different perspective on the situation. They may also be able to offer practical advice or support. Fifthly, it can be helpful to create a safe and comfortable environment for yourself. This might involve decluttering your space, adding plants or other natural elements, or using calming colors and lighting. By creating a positive and nurturing environment, you can reduce your sense of vulnerability and make yourself feel more secure. Sixthly, it can be helpful to engage in activities that distract you from the feeling. This might involve reading a book, watching a movie, listening to music, or spending time with loved ones. By focusing your attention on something else, you can temporarily alleviate the feeling of being watched. Seventhly, it can be helpful to seek professional help if the feeling is persistent, intense, or accompanied by other symptoms. A therapist can help you to identify the underlying causes of the feeling and to develop strategies for coping with it. They may also recommend medication if necessary. In conclusion, the feeling of being watched is a complex and multifaceted experience that can be influenced by a variety of factors, including evolutionary history, psychological biases, neurological processes, environmental factors, and cultural beliefs. While it is not necessarily a sign of mental illness, it can be distressing and unsettling. By understanding the underlying causes of the feeling and by using appropriate coping strategies, it is possible to reduce its intensity and frequency and to regain a sense of control over your experience.